Guys, so we can get started here on our first real homework for the summer. And so we want to start getting used to a textbook resource that we're going to get using during the year. So I just Googled it, CS Awesome. I'll post a link on Classroom. Google it. I'm just going to go through the first couple sections, and then I'll post another video that goes through more of the sections. So we click on here. They have some little introduction. You can read it if you want. But right here are the links to all of the chapters. And I can zoom in a little bit. So the unit that we want to do, the only thing that we'll be doing for the rest of the summer is getting started on Unit 1. So click Unit 1, and they've got their table of contents. So they have section 1.1, Getting Started. You can if you want to, but do not read section 1.1. Do not read section 1.1. Click on section 1.2. Title is Why Programming, Why Java. So we click here, just a regular old textbook chapter. They estimate that it should take 45 minutes. I think because you're going to get my video, it might be a little bit shorter. Anyway, so why programming, why Java? Basically, I'm going to scroll through the textbook with you and explain some of the key concepts, highlight the key stuff that I want you guys to know. But you can also go through and read this again and go through their videos at your own pace. Basically, they explain Java is a programming language. If you've taken my classes in the past, that's something like Python. So Java is something that we use to make programs, just like we did Python. If you did Scratch in middle school, many of you in the survey said you did Scratch. Scratch is a programming language. Basically, it's a way to structure our code so that the computer can understand it. So the real thing that we want to do here, especially, well, if you're new or if you're not new, we just want to get used to kind of the most basic way that we can write Java code and get used to how things look. This is going to be useful all year as we make projects and as we go on to do the AP exam. So throughout the textbook, they have all these blocks of code. That's honestly the most important thing. You'll notice that they highlight key vocab words in blue. So when we do vocab quizzes, we're going to be basing things off of the blue vocab words. And I'm going to post a little quiz for us to do a practice quiz in the summer, and then we'll do a real quiz in the beginning of the school year that'll count for a grade. So we'll have some practice quizzes as we're going through the summer, real quiz in the beginning of the school year, and we'll practice doing some kind of AP type questions based on this vocab. Anyways, back to the code. All Java programs they start with what is called a class. We're going to get more into what a class is later on, but basically this is going to be code right here that you're going to copy paste, and this is how you're going to start all of your programs. The only thing that you're allowed to change here is what you call the my class thing. So here, instead of saying my class, if we were making a program about student grades, we would maybe say public class student grade program, or we would come up with some creative name. This would be the only thing that we can change, and then we're going to put our code here. But the rest of this is something that you would copy paste and you would include in every single program. Your program won't work without this stuff. They're giving you a little note. So blue things here are something that you should read, just extra information. This is what we call a curly brace. I'll zoom in on it. This thing is called a curly brace. So you'll see that these are kind of matched up. So these are kind of lined up. And so this one is a left curly brace. This one is a right curly brace, left curly brace, right curly brace, that match up. These ones are called parentheses, right, left parenthesis, right parenthesis. This is called a square bracket. This is a left square bracket, a right square bracket. Cool. So they have this little interactive code runner thing that they'll use throughout the textbook. So if you click run, it will compile your code. We'll talk about compiling later, but it'll show you the output of the program in this little gray box down here. So without knowing too much, we can kind of read. My air conditioner's turning on. 1 second. We can read this code, and based on what we know, we can kind of predict what's going to happen, although we have what's going to happen down here. So we learned up here that this is just what you need to include in your code for it to run at all. And then inside what we call main here, inside this main method, this is where you put the actual code where you want stuff to actually happen. So in this little program here, we see all the stuff that we have to include. And then on line 5, this is the stuff that will happen. So when we hit run, this printed hi there. We could, and we'll learn what all this system out print line means, but basically print means show this on the screen. So as you're going through this, I would urge you to edit this code a little bit and see if you can predict what's going to happen. As you see, I added another line of code, and it added another print down here. So I printed hi there, and then on the next line I printed hey again. Okay, so that's important. So you can play with their little code editor here. We're not going to get started with doing big projects right now, but if you just want to experiment a little bit with Java, you can go ahead and do that using the code editors that they include in the textbook. Okay. So I'm not going to go through all of this in exact detail. You're going to read it. But in section 1.2.2, they go over different print commands. So you'll go through, you can run their code, predict what's going to happen. They note some extra stuff in here. So in this paragraph, they're talking about the semicolon. And I imagine that this is going to be something that's going to be something frustrating at the beginning, and we'll just learn it as we go along. But you notice here, each line of code, the last character on every line is a semicolon. Similar to how you end a sentence in English with a period, you end every statement of code with a semicolon. Now, there's not every line of code ends with a semicolon, but every statement of code. So the stuff inside here, these are statements. So there's 1, 2, 3 statements. They're each print statements, and those statements end in a semicolon. This line up here is not a statement. We'll learn more about the details in a little while. Okay, cool. So now they go through the definition of syntax errors and what is debugging. A syntax error basically means that you typed your program wrong. Debugging is the process of fixing errors. So you'll see the exact definitions there, but basically that's the gist of it. Okay, so they have another blended video in here. We don't really need to worry about that right now. We're going to get into debugging a lot as we go through and do our lab activities in the year. So when we go ahead and we get a coding assignment and we go through and try and code stuff, that's where we're going to learn a lot about debugging. And if you've taken a programming class in the past with me or without me, you'll know what debugging is. You've done it already. Cool. So another feature of the textbook is they've got these little drag and drop code puzzle thingies. It's kind of like Scratch, but you're dragging around like full lines of code. So I can go over here, drag around my stuff. If you can tell, I'm doing it wrong. So you do that, and I hit check, and it's going to say, no, not correct. So you're going to go through. It's a good exercise for you. I'm not going to collect this or anything, but it's good for you to drag these around and hit check so that you know what's up. This is another one where you don't have to drag out every single block. You kind of get a choice. You'll kind of figure out how that works. But again, you'll be able to hit check, and it'll tell you And there's a little help me button if you need help. Cool. This is just going through a few different errors. This is nice practice. This is stuff that if you don't understand how this debugging works or what these errors are on the first try as you're going through this chapter this summer, doesn't matter at all. We're going to practice a million times during the school year, but it's good to get an introduction and to start thinking in that mindset. Okay, so just more errors, more practice. Little section 1.2.4 here, very short. They teach us what a comment is. So to type a comment, there's two options. There's little things you type in your code. And a comment basically is a way of saying that this section of code, between these little symbols, this is English. So you could write literally whatever you want in here and it won't affect what the program does. But a lot of times you'll include this stuff in your program as you're making code. You include the comments as a means of communicating what the code is doing or adding notes for somebody else who's looking at the code, or if you're looking at the code later. We're going to do a lot with comments this year, but this is just teaching you the definition, and it shows you what symbols you need to type to make a comment. Excellent. 1.2.5 here is just a little challenge to debug this code. So you're going to try a bunch of different things and keep hitting run until the code works. At the bottom here, they have the summary. If you're really lazy and you think you can just, if you're really lazy, just read this. But it's good for you to read this whole textbook chapter. I think their explanations are really good. If you were in my class last year and you used our textbook, maybe you were frustrated with that textbook. I chose this one because I find this one to be actually pretty good explanations. I don't know what I just clicked. Anyways, so that's that. At the bottom, 1.2.7 is some few AP practice questions. And hopefully when you've gotten through the whole chapter, these will be easy to practice. So again, anything in the textbook, I'm not going to grade. This is for you to do for your own studying. But I will post a quiz to test your understanding, like an ungraded quiz this summer that we'll take before the school year. And then we'll go over this stuff again at the beginning of the year a little bit quickly, and then we'll do a graded test for an actual grade in September. All right, good luck with this stuff, and I'll post a few more videos about the different sections of the book as we go through the rest of Unit 1.